A 2-year-old disappears. Her mother doesn't call the police for 31 days. In that time she goes clubbing, gets a beautiful life tattoo, and builds a lie so elaborate that a jury later decides they can't prove she killed her own child. This is the Casey Anthony case stripped down to its core. Not just a tragedy but a collision between one woman's pathological deception and systems that were never built to see through it. In this episode of The Hidden Complex, we're going inside the psychology of Casey Anthony, and the institutional blind spots that helped her walk out of court a free woman. Stay with me because what I'm about to reveal about her lies will change how you see every other crime story you've ever watched. June 16, 2008. It's the last day anyone outside the Anthony home can reliably place 2-year-old Kaylee alive. For the next month, Kaylee's mother, 22-year-old Casey Anthony, tells no one that her daughter is missing. She tells her parents Kaylee is with the nanny. She tells friends she's busy with work. In reality, she's staying with her boyfriend, going to bars, entering a hot body contest, and posting online about her beautiful life. On the surface it looks like simple selfishness. But as we'll see later in this video, that month-long silence is actually the clearest window into how Casey manages reality itself. On July 15th, Casey's car is towed from a parking lot. Her mother, Cindy, retrieves it and immediately tells 911 the car smells like there's been a dead body inside. That same night, after a family confrontation, Casey finally admits she hasn't seen Kaylee in weeks and claims a nanny, Zani, kidnapped her. There is no nanny. There never was. In December 2008, Kaylee's skeletal remains are found in a wooded area less than a mile from the Anthony home, wrapped in a trash bag with duct tape near the skull. Casey is charged with first-degree murder. 3 years later, the jury acquits her of homicide. She's only convicted of lying to law enforcement. On paper, that's the timeline. But timelines don't explain why. And this is where the case stops being about dates and starts being about something much more unsettling. A person for whom lies are not an emergency strategy but a lifestyle. To understand this case, you have to accept one uncomfortable starting point. Lying wasn't something Casey did in a crisis. Lying was the way she lived. Stay with me here because the pattern of her lies, long before Kaylee was even born, will sound disturbingly familiar if you've ever watched other high-profile cases where no one saw it coming. Long before Kaylee disappeared, Casey was known for deception. But her lies weren't random. They escalated. Each one became more daring, more public, and more intertwined with the systems around her. The first level is personal deception. She tells her parents she's about to graduate high school. In reality, she hasn't finished the credits. Graduation day comes. Her family throws a party. She shows up in the robes. The entire event is built on a lie that could have been exposed with a single phone call to the school, but no one makes that call. Then the second level, professional deception. Casey claims she has a job at Universal Studios. She gets up in the morning, dresses for work, and leaves the house day after day. She maintains this story not for a week, not for a month, but for years after she'd actually been fired. This isn't just lying. This is constructing a daily routine around a fiction and trusting that the people around you will never test it. But the third level is where her pattern crosses from private fantasy into outright manipulation of institutions. When detectives ask her to take them to her office at Universal Studios, she doesn't hesitate. She confidently walks them through the lobby, down the hallway, onto the lot. She carries herself like any normal employee giving a tour. Only when she reaches a literal dead end, a locked door at the back of a hallway with detectives standing there waiting for her to open it, does she finally admit she doesn't work there at all. That walk through Universal is not just a bizarre anecdote. It's a psychological X-ray of how far she's willing to go to maintain control over the story. And what happens after that moment tells us as much about the system as it does about her. The detectives are stunned. But they don't arrest her for fraud. They don't end the interview. They sit her down and keep talking. And that decision, continuing the conversation with a proven liar, sets the stage for everything that happens next. Because once you understand that Casey will confidently guide trained investigators through a building where she doesn't work, you start to see how she could guide an entire investigation off course. So what kind of psychology are we dealing with here? Clinically, a lot of people throw around terms like pathological liar, sociopath, or narcissist. But those labels can blur more than they clarify. What matters for this case is the function of the lies. Most people lie to avoid consequences. Casey lies to protect an image. Think about the 3 examples. Graduation, job, kidnapping. In each case, the lie does the same thing. It preserves a version of Casey as the put-together daughter, the employed young professional, the caring mother whose child was taken by someone else. There's another layer too. Her lies always recruit other people. Her parents have to play the proud family of a graduate. Her friends have to believe they're respecting a working mom's busy schedule. Detectives have to play along as she leads them through Universal. Her reality only works if everyone around her quietly agrees not to question it. And this is exactly where individual psychology collides with systemic failure. Because the people around Casey are not just family members. They're also part of institutions that are supposed to test claims. Schools, employers, law enforcement. We like to imagine those systems as skeptical by default. But in Casey's story they behave more like her parents, trusting first, verifying later, if at all. Keep watching because the way those systems respond to her lies later, police, prosecutors, even the jury, will show you that this isn't just a Casey Anthony problem. It's a structural problem. Let's go back to that missing month. For 31 days, Casey doesn't report her child missing. Instead, she creates a fantasy timeline where Kaylee is with a nanny, where she's working at a job she doesn't have, where everything looks normal from the outside. Her friends later describe her as calm, even carefree. There are photos of her at parties, on dance floors, smiling. In an ordinary world, a mother not reporting a missing 2-year-old for a month is an immediate red flag. But here's the uncomfortable truth. To the people around her, the lie works. They accept the idea of the nanny. They accept the idea of work. They accept the idea that a young mom might need nights out. The only thing that breaks the spell is the smell in the car. Cindy Anthony's 911 call, where she says it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car, is the first time someone in Casey's orbit names what's actually happening instead of accepting the version she's offering. But by the time someone finally questions the story, it's already too late. And that delay sets up a devastating dynamic for the rest of the case. Casey's lies get weeks to harden in people's minds before law enforcement even enters the picture. When detectives finally sit down with her, they're not walking into a fresh scene. They're walking into a story that's been rehearsed for a month. This is why, later at trial, so much of the evidence is circumstantial. The physical trail is cold. The body isn't found until December. And in that gap, Casey's version of events has room to spread, mutate, and confuse. But the most disturbing part is not that she lied. It's that almost every system she touched gave those lies space to grow. When she falsely claims she left Kaylee with a nanny at an apartment complex, police go there and find nothing. No nanny. No record. No sign she ever lived there. When she claims to work at Universal, they let her lead them onto the property and into that dead-end hallway. At each stage, she's given the benefit of the doubt until the moment her lie becomes impossible to maintain. And by then she's already buying time with the next lie. Now you might think, once all of this comes out at trial, the fake job, the fake nanny, the fake apartment, the jury will see her as what she is, a chronic, escalating liar. But that's where this case turns from psychologically disturbing to legally terrifying. Because the justice system doesn't convict people of murder for being liars. It convicts them for evidence that proves, beyond a reasonable doubt, that they committed a specific act. And this is exactly where Casey's psychology and the system's blind spots intersect in the most dangerous way. By the time the case goes to trial, the defense doesn't have to prove that Casey is honest. They just have to prove that the state can't say with certainty what happened to Kaylee when it happened or how it happened. Casey's lies, ironically, create that uncertainty. She's told so many different versions of reality that reconstructing a single, provable narrative of events becomes almost impossible. Every timeline the prosecution tries to build runs headfirst into a wall of, we don't know, and we can't prove. And in a system built on beyond a reasonable doubt, confusion benefits the defendant. So when the jury looks at her, they're not asked, is she a liar? They're asked, has the state proven with certainty that she murdered her child? And in that narrow legal frame the answer for them is no. What looks like a failure of morality, how could they let her go, is, underneath, a failure of structure. A system that was never designed to handle someone who lies this extensively, this confidently, and this early in the timeline of a crime. This is why cases like this feel so deeply wrong. Our moral intuition says, she's lying. She's hiding something. She must be guilty. But our legal structure says, we need something more than that. And here's the part that should really stay with you. Casey Anthony is not the only person who has ever used lies to create reasonable doubt. In future episodes we're going to look at other cases where deception didn't just mislead family and friends, it exploited the very rules meant to create fairness in court. If you want to keep pulling on that thread, the next case I'd recommend you watch is our breakdown of Chris Watts' where the same pattern of deception and institutional blind spots played out in a completely different family with a very different outcome. It's linked on screen and in the description. If this kind of psychological and systemic breakdown is what you've been looking for in true crime, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next episode of The Hidden Complex. And tell me in the comments, did the system fail more because of Casey, or because of the way it's built? Because the question isn't just, did she do it? The question is, how many more people like her are already moving through the same blind spots right now? And how many times will we say, we can't prove it before we decide the system itself needs to change?